without any further ado, I'm going to call Ali back for session 2, and thank you so much.
All right, welcome back. Ali, grateful alcoholic. Can we please, if you don't mind, so I can get centered, can we just take a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer, please, if you don't mind? God. All right, thank you guys. If we're coming back, it's good you came back. I was afraid you would come back. Okay, that's good. I want to. It's important. I keep I feel the need to keep like reiterating this point in that, you know, when transformation happens, it's been my experience, right? And somebody talks about the transformation, naturally they get excited, right? And there's passion and conviction in it. So just please don't ever misconstrue my passion, my conviction for a direction to you. That's not the case. For me telling you this is what you have to do, or you're doing it wrong. No, that's not the case at all. It's just my experience, so I'm sharing it, you know? So just please keep that in mind. Like it's my truth, but it's not the truth. You know, the beautiful thing about this path is that we all get to have our own truth. You know, through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, good sponsorship, the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous, we all get to have an experience with truth. That's another name for God, another aspect of God for me, truth, right? So when Judith, about a year ago, she asked me to come and do a workshop, and she said every year we have people come and do workshop on the steps, right? So we don't want to just do the steps, just can you come up with some topics? So I sat in meditation and prayer, and these are the topics that came in meditation. They screamed at me. These are the topics that came, and I mean, the beautiful thing about, I love it actually that it's like this instead of me talking about officially a step, right? Because I get to share my experience around it. Any topic in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's just filled with the principles of the steps anyways. It's about this path, right? So the first topic was really step 11, really at depth, right? Deepening the conscious contact with power. The title of this session is what it sounds like when the Spirit whispers, okay? So perhaps a more humble way to say it now in hindsight, when I think about it, it should have been what it has sounded like when the Spirit has whispered to me. Okay, maybe that's a more accurate way to say it. I believe the Spirit has been whispering for thousands of years. For thousands of years, through many different faiths and religions and spiritual paths, the Spirit has been whispering. Many different sacred books has been whispering. See, but I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear the whisper. I couldn't hear the message. I couldn't hear the assignment because I was distracted by I couldn't see the beauty of the forest because of the ugliness of some of these trees, right? Because of the ugliness of some of these trees. I would badmouth religions as a whole because of what I saw happen in Iran, what that Muslim fanatic government did in the name of God, because of the ugliness of some of his trees. I would dismiss Christianity as a whole because of some of the stuff with the priests and the right, because of the ugliness of some of his trees. I couldn't hear the whisper. I couldn't hear the whisper because really the real reason is that I was way too consumed in self, drowning in self, dying in self. What's happening to me? How am I affected? Pay attention to me. What am I going to lose now? What am I not going to gain now? Everything that happened in my life was one person in the center of it. My main concern was me, how I'm affected. I believe what the Spirit has been whispering for thousands of years literally has traveled through space-time, thousands of years, many different messages, many different forms. I believe the whisper is, be still and know that I'm loved. Be still and know that I'm loved. Everything's all right in this moment. And here's the message. You want to get to know me? Get to know my kids. You want to have a relationship with me? Go serve my kids. I believe that the Spirit whispered 87 plus years ago to Abby Thatcher. The Spirit whispered in a way that we could digest it, that I could digest it, that a kid from Iran who moved to Canada 36 years ago, that couldn't be further in likeness from the creators of this program. Further in likeness. The Spirit whispered for me to hear that message 87 plus years later. That message that Abby Thatcher passed on to Bill Wilson, and I believe it's Towns Hospital, in his third treatment there. Bill was trying to get sober, and he couldn't. His third treatment there, Abby did, I guess, what was at the steps at the time, right? In a few days or a couple of weeks in the hospital with them, Bill had a white lightning experience. He felt the presence of love and God. He had a white lightning experience. And the message was, if you want to keep this, now it's your turn to start to pass it along. I think the big book says that Bill talks about how my friend emphasized the need for me to pass this message on to others. And Bill went about doing that, attempting to do that for the next 6 months of his sobriety there. Pulling people off of bar stools and forcing people. You need to stay sober. He didn't get anyone sober. The way he was passing on the message didn't get anyone sober. He stayed sober, but no one else stayed sober. I think perhaps he was missing something at that time. And then he ended up in the Mayflower Hotel lobby. He had a business deal that went down to the dumps. He couldn't pay for his hotel room. He was walking back and forth in the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel, and the drink called him. 6 months, the drink hadn't called him. The drink called him, frightened him. And all of a sudden, the Spirit turned his gaze to the phone book, and the Spirit whispered in his ear, but if you drink, what's going to happen to all those other alcoholics and families that would have had a life if you would have stayed sober and passed this message on? Go pass this message on. But this time he woke up. He really heard the depth of the whisper. Don't go force this message on. Pass this message on. Why? For you to stay sober. He made a few phone calls and ended up meeting Dr. Bob, and was supposed to be a 15-minute conversation. We all know the stories. Please forgive me for reviewing the history there. What was supposed to be a 15-minute conversation ended up being hours. And the language of love was started. It was as if God grabbed two of his broken souls, like pebbles, dropped them in the pond of life, and through space-time ripple effects of it, language of love, from one alcoholic's desire to stay sober himself. Ain't that beautiful? Ain't that beautiful? And then the big book was written. And those little ripples of language of love, they started to become like waves. Thousands of people started to get sober. And it's reached me. That same whisper has reached me. And all of us, I think, in our own way, we're riding the waves of this language of love. Millions of people sober, and my wife is experiencing, and my son is experiencing, the man I sponsor, the people I interact with. Language of love. From one person answering the call of the Spirit, answering the whisper. Remember we were talking about earlier? My insignificance and my significance. Mountains are moved. Mountains are moved with this power, with this program. The first time that I really heard the whisper wasn't inside of me. It was through you. I was too consumed in self, too blocked. What's happening to me? My life's problem is you and my mother and the addicted father's beatings and the bombing in Iran and the molestation of those two 15-year-old kid boys when I was 7 years old. I was too much in that. It was faint inside of me, the whisper. But I heard it when I was 12-step in 2006 through one of you beautiful people, a loving member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think he had 12 years at that time. I heard it loud through his action. Because he was answering the call of the Spirit to pass this message on to someone else. By the way, if you haven't figured it out yet, the 12th step is the whisper, in my experience, in my opinion, by the way, right? I think there's a line in the big book, I'm paraphrasing, it talks about like, your actions are so loud that I can't hear, or maybe somewhere else, right? What you're saying. Through his loving action of answering the call of the Spirit, to pass this message on to another broken soul like me who can't stay sober, who wants to kill himself. I heard it loud, man. I heard it loud. I didn't know at that time that's what you were doing, though. I didn't know that you were fulfilling the assignment, that you answered the call. I didn't know. I had no idea. I was too consumed in self. What I brought to you guys, what I brought to that gentleman, and the first set of long-timers and old-timers, just loving people in AA that were awakened, that tried to help me. What I brought to you guys was the confusion. Why is it that every single time I pick up a drink, I destroy my life? Why is it that my dad used to call me weak? Just be a man. Have a few drinks, that's it, go to work the next day. Because he was an active addict that worked. He always put food on the table. I was unable to work. That's just the way it affected me, right? Why is it that I have a couple of shots and I had moved back to my parents' condo and my poor mom saw that my eyes, like she saw my eyes that the drink was on me. I had to go. And she bear hugged one of my legs because she thought her son's going to die this time, a 25-year-old little baby, right? She bear hugged my leg and I just pulled my leg out from her hand. I kicked her in the shoulder, stole her wallet, stole all her money, and went and drank for 2 weeks. Why is it? I was confused. I brought you guys the confusion that although I have had ample evidence in my life that I shouldn't drink, that the drink destroys my life, I have all the desire and I feel the necessity not to. Yet why is it that I go back to the first drink? I was confused. I brought that confusion to you guys. I was in too much pain and confusion. Why is it that suicide attempt after suicide attempt is not sufficient for me to learn the lesson that the drink kills me? Don't go back to it. You explained to me the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind and just blew my mind, terrified me. That's some illness, man. An illness in which love is not enough? Are you kidding me? You see what love has conquered in this world? A good woman's love is not enough. A child's love is not. A mother's love is not enough. That's some powerful illness, man. A few years later down the road, when I came back to you guys all broken, all humble and teachable, when the gift of desperation, by the way, that's a gift, eh? I cannot, for me, my experience, I try to surrender. Surrender happens to me. It's a gift of desperation. When the gift of desperation meets the grace of God, in that moment when the stars line up, it's magic, man. When the gift of desperation met the grace of God at that moment. And that lady, that Native Indian lady, my original sponsor, took me through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was set on fire, man. And I'm still on fire. I've been on fire since then. Not a perfect life. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. On fire. On fire for a deeper relationship, for a deeper yearning to have a deeper relationship with this loving power as in the last session. On fire to have a deeper relationship with you. On fire and loudly clear to me in my ears, in my being, on fire to answer the call of the Spirit to pass this message on. That's a purpose of my life. I live a life filled with a deep sense of meaning and purpose. That's why. Life can't be about happiness for me. Happiness is a byproduct that'll happen or not happen. Doesn't matter. I live a purposeful life. That means I get to carry my cross and walk with it. My cross of depression, I get to carry it and walk with it. Proud, man. Life no longer happens to me all the time. It happens for me. How can I be useful here, God? You know? I start to sponsor people. I start to answer the call of the Spirit, the 12 step, at 3.5 months of sobriety. And I like to share that. Not because everyone should do it like that, but because there is no cookie cutter thing to do this, way to do this, right? When the Spirit calls you, you got to answer. I was at the 12th step. I was afraid. I felt less than. I felt like I have nothing to offer. And I would tell this sponsor and others about that fear. And what I was told is, Ali, it's none of your business to whom, how, where you pass this message on. If you're at the 12, if you're at step 12, you pray. Just pray, ask God, and make yourself available. That's it. It doesn't matter. It's not about the number of sponsees or what they do. No, it's about you attempting to be of service, to pass on what is freely being given to you, because only one thing ensures immunity from alcohol. Only when all else fails, the desire and the attempt to pass this message on, not the perfection of, right? The desire and the attempt to pass this message on. So I was in and out for 7 years, right? People knew me in AA, and I like to think, you know what I think? I think maybe that sponsor at the time and a bunch of the other elders, maybe they had a meeting together, right? And they said, you know, this kid, I think he's sick of the most. So we better encourage him to pass on something to somebody. He'll never stay sober. So I would come to these meetings and I would share. People just that knew me just saw such a transformation in the way I was walking, in the way I was talking, in my demeanor. That one gentleman, Ramsey, he had 16 months of sobriety at that time. I just 3.5 months. And he came to me and said, Ali, he wasn't enough for a while. He had 16 months sobriety. He said, Ali, can you take me through the steps the way you were taking through the steps? I've never had the big book experience. And I'm just like, are you sure, Ramsey? Because look, man, I had 3 months of sobriety. He's like, I don't care. I just want that experience. Just show me how you did it. I was like, okay. So I would literally take the subway, meet him at his house and at his condo downtown Toronto 3 days a week. Every time I'll be in this elevator shaking. I swear to God, shaking, scared, thinking I'm going to sound stupid. What do I really know? Did this really happen to me? Am I faking it? Right? Alcoholism, right? So I would open the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and I would go through it line by line, just like it was done for me. I'm not telling everybody to do this. I'm saying that's what happened for me. I'm just sharing my experience, okay? Highlight where the highlights were done for me. Notes where the notes were done for me. It really doesn't matter what you highlight and what you take. It's just taking the actions what does it, right? But I'm just saying that's what I did, right? And then I saw this man at 16 months of sobriety. When he went through the round of the steps and his eyes lit up and he was set on fire, I was like, holy crap, this thing really works. Because I got to see it in someone else, you know what I mean? I can't see it in me. I didn't know how bad I was when I was drinking and active. Everyone else saw how bad I was. And I don't know how well I'm getting. I guess others that people see it in me. I got to see it in someone else. So my faith grew in this process, in answering the call of the Spirit, you know? I want to share something with you. That gentleman passed away a few years ago. After a few years, he went and drank. And I was trying to help him a couple of times and just didn't connect, wasn't able to. And in one of our conversations, you know what he said to me? He said, Ali, I appreciate you for taking me through the steps in the big book like you were taking. It transformed my life. He was in and out at that time, right? I had an experience with this program that I never had before. And I just want to share something with you. You know, the reason that I came to you wasn't to get that transformation. I didn't think I would get it. I saw it in you. But I heard you share at a meeting that I need to pass this on to somebody because I don't want to drink anymore. So that's why I asked you. Because I wanted you to stay sober. And that's how this program works. That's God showing me this is how this program works. I'm not doing anybody a favor by sponsoring them. They're doing me a favor. That's how I stay sober. God uses everybody in his own way, in her own way. you know. And I would continue to pray in the mornings, God, because my sponsor at the time said, you got to pray, make yourself available, right? And I take direction. So I'm just like that. God, if you see fit, would you put a sponsor in my path? Because I don't want to drink and die. Thank you, God. Some childish prayer like that, you know? So I ended up going to a men's shelter, visiting one this time, not staying in one. That was a miracle itself, right? My sponsor sent me there. Apparently the gentleman who's putting on an AA meeting there, he went out, they had nobody, they needed a fill-in. So I ended up being a fill-in for like a year there, right? And I would set up the meeting, so I would read 3 pages from the big book. And these men would share from the pain and the chaos and the brokenness of their lives. And I would share that I relate to you. I haven't drank in 4 months. I haven't drank in 5 months. I haven't want to kill myself in 5 months. I'm happy most of the time. And I would go back every week saying the same thing, every week saying the same thing. And these men start to trust me. They start to trust me. My sobriety, maybe that's how God was using me. Okay, this is my thinking around it. Maybe I'm wrong. The way what God was using me is that they start to trust not the validity of my sobriety. They start to trust me more than with someone with 20 years, I believe. That's how it sounded to me. Not the truth of it. It's the tangibility of my sobriety, if that's a word, I think, right? The fact that when you're new and broken sometimes, man, somebody with 5 months on fire seems so much more tangible than somebody with 30 years, right? So they would come back to me after the meeting and, Ali, can you just help us with these steps that you talk about? How do you stay sober? Can you help us do that? Sure, I will. I'll just take you through the big book. So I just did with them what was done for me. I would go line by line and I would forget what to do and what column was. Hold on, I got to call my sponsor. What was the 4th column again? How do you do it? And I don't know if any of those men or those first gifts from God are sober today. But you know who's sober? I haven't had a drink. I haven't had a drink since, man. I haven't had a drink. See, when I would argue with my elders at the time that you need a year before sponsoring, because that's what I heard in the rooms, right? You need 2 years, 6 months, any set period. Remember, rigidity is the prison and dying, right? That what would happen was this. When I argue with them, what they would say to me kindly and sternly is that, Ali, that's interesting you're thinking, because if Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob had the same thinking as you, that there has to be a set period of time before you sponsor somebody through the 12 steps, then there would be no Alcoholics Anonymous. They would be dead, we would be dead. You'd probably be drunk and dead too right now. So please don't, like, I get it. I understand that at that time, everyone's newly sober, everyone's young in sobriety. So everyone young in sobriety had to pass this night. I get that, right? And today, in Alcoholics Anonymous, 87 plus years later, there's so many beautiful, powerful, long-term walks in sobriety, which I want what they have, I do, right? But here's the thing, man. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be sober today. Do you know what I mean? So what I pray for you is this. If you are new in sobriety and you have a sponsor that tells you that you're at the 12th step, I pray that God puts people around you, beautiful souls around you that are going to fan that fire for you, man, not extinguish it. I hope they're going to fan that fire for you. It started from one conversation, eh? One conversation, 50, 87 plus years. I pray that you have that experience. And what I want to share with you is this. So I'm sponsoring a lot of people and passing this message on, and life is beautiful and just, you know, just amazing. When I'm answering the call of the Spirit, when I'm in my assignments for the day, usually it's help another alcoholic, right? When I'm in my assignments for the day, man, I'm in bliss. No matter what's going on in my life, I'm in bliss, right? So I don't know if this happened for anybody here. This happened to me, okay? Give somebody whose entire life he felt like he's not enough, that he's ugly, that he's a loser. Give him access to a power that can use him to help other people recover. You know what happened to me after a while? I started to think I am the power. I started to take ownership of that power. You know, the big book, it says, there's a line that says, we in our turn sought escape like a drowning man seeks a life preserver, right? Like the spirit of, we're all drowning men and women together, we do, right? All of a sudden, I stopped becoming a drowning man with seeking desperation. I thought I was a lifeguard. I'm on the deck, walking back and forth, telling everybody they're doing it wrong. You got to do it like this, and you got to get a new sponsor. He's not doing it this way. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And I'm so grateful for the people that came before me, because they loved me when I was unlovable a little bit. You know what I mean? That's important. We don't shoot our wounded. That's what I hear. And for the people that were unkind to me when I was unkind, I want to thank you as well, because you gave me a shake. And you also taught me what not to be like. Right? See, one time, as I was telling everybody what to do, and I was on fire, and I thought my way is the only way, and I would stop. I got to a point where I thought there was, and this happened to me a few times actually in my sobriety. There's an image to uphold in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's about sounding good and looking good, right? I was sponsoring this gentleman named Peter, and a few years back. And Peter, man, he went through the steps in the big book, and he had 6, 7, 8 months of sobriety, powerful. I was just like, holy moly, man. It was just blowing me away what happened to this guy. Like a year, he sobered his 1 year. After about 12, 14 months, Peter stopped coming around so much. Peter ended up drinking. And I kept on trying to help him. I would go to his house. I would take him to detoxes. I would pray for him, pray with him, right? One of these times when I was trying to help him, and he was coming back. I remember I went to visit him in his house. He was in his room. I was trying to get him to come to a meeting. We had a nice conversation. You know what he told me? What he said was, Ali, you know, I believe part of the reason why I went to drink. He said, I started to get anxious in life. And I was ashamed to tell you about it and share it with you, because you set such a bar of perfection that I thought I could never reach that. So I started to take some, what's that? Trazodone, I don't know, right? Anti-anxiety medication. Overtake it, not prescribed, right? And I picked up the bottle and I can't stop right now. And I'm not saying this to you, please don't misunderstand. I'm not so asleep today to think that I have the power to make anyone drink or to save anybody. That's not what happens here. But there's a huge lesson in that for me. When I think I'm running the show, I destroy things. A few months later, Peter died of alcoholism. And I woke up. I just like to believe that we're all here to fulfill our assignment, to fulfill our soul contract. And I think his was just over, that's all. I got to wear this world like a loose garment. If there's a cookie cutter way to do this thing, and I'm a big book believer, right? But if there's a cookie cutter every single time, must be this way to do this thing, then there's nothing to do with God, having to do with me and my ego or my wants and my needs. A gentleman came to me a few years ago, 20-something years sober on fellowship, real alcoholic by all accounts of his story, sober on fellowship, and dibble-dabbling in steps. And I started to do the cookie cutter thing that I always do, line by line through the big book. And, you know, after the third step prayer, we launch and we got a vigorous action. And you know, you guys know about this, right? Let's go column by column, let's hurry. Right? And this gentleman couldn't do it, couldn't keep up. And after some conversation, I started to realize it's not very apparent, but it started to become more apparent through more relationship and spending time together that he has some challenges, learning challenges, mental challenges. So myself and this gentleman, we went through a 4th step and 5th step over a period of 14 months. One resentment at a time on the phone, the fourth and the fifth right there on that resentment. Next one, fear, sex, right? It didn't look like I wanted to look like it. It didn't look like what the big book says. That gentleman is sober today, and he's had an experience that he hadn't had in 25 years before that, the last 2-3 years. He made his amends. He's hopeful in life today. He goes to meetings and he talks about God and he looks for the newcomer today. I don't know. I'm sorry, man. Just like the power of just love. You know what I mean? The power of love, man. This big book, what is it? It's like a couple of inches thick. I say this sometimes. You can get a really smart English lit student to come and unpack and dissect these words and give us a talk. It'll blow your mind, but it will be shallow. It won't mean anything. Like you'll think that's interesting, you'll leave and forget all about it. It won't have impact in your heart. The reason this has impact in our hearts when we share with each other is we get to pour our experience on the pages of this book. This is a treasure map. And God will show up. God will tell me how to do this, how not to do that. I have an idea. I think I want to do this, but God, what's your plan? This was his plan with this man. You know, I got to wear this world like a loose garment. At about, going back a little bit, about just sharing my experience with passing this message on, the whisper, right? At about 4 years sobriety, I can't remember. Me and my original sponsor, we started to grow apart spiritually, me and Donna. Beautiful lady. We're still best of friends, eh? I love that lady. We just started to grow apart spiritually. And I started to pray. Donna gave me the 12 step. What I mean is the way this lady worked with men and women, she instilled in me the importance of passing this message on. I'm so grateful for her. I needed that message. We grew up apart spiritually, and I was praying. I was asking God to please, God, would you see, if you see fit, would you please put another teacher in my path for me to get to know you more? And God never denies that prayer, by the way. That's a powerful prayer for me to get to know you more. Peter M came in my life. Peter M from Florida. If you guys have experienced Peter, he's a beautiful man of God. And what Peter taught me is discipline. At 20-something years, 30-something years sobriety, writing inventory still, with his sponsor, he taught me about a disciplined spiritual life, the power of that, how important that is. His relationship with God blew my mind, man. And I took direction, and I'm talking about now being sponsored, right? The kind of sponsors that I've had. I took direction, and I was inspired by him. And I was teachable. And I've had similar experiences, my own experiences personal to me, you know? And about 6.5 years ago, Peter was sponsoring me for a couple of years, and alcoholism had returned again. See, it's kind of baffling and powerful for this reason, because I don't see my ego growing in the background. I don't see it. That's why a solitary self-appraisal seldom suffices. I need you to see it for me. I need to give you spiritual consent so you can tell me, Ali, you're going offside here. I need to have that trust with you to understand that it's coming from a place of love. So for about a year, I stopped sharing myself openly with you guys. You know, I thought again there was an image to uphold in a talking here and there, just, you know. And my wife went for some minor surgery. She's an alcoholic like me, 12 years sober. Beautiful child of God she is, man. Ooh, how God uses her. I'm talking about internally. Yeah, of course, externally. I'm talking about. The doctor gave her some Percocets, you know, those painkillers, prescribed painkillers, right? I've never had a problem with pills. It was always take it or leave it, right? And the ego had grown upon me, and alcoholism waits patiently and doesn't come at me as a drink anymore. It comes sideways. It comes from the back door. This time it was waiting on my shoulders, and it said to me, hey, you haven't had a problem with pills. Take a couple. So I took a couple. And the next morning, thank God for good sponsorship. Thank God for an ounce of humility. Thank God for a loving God. I came clean to my sponsor. I renewed my dry days. I'm sober a little over 6 years now, right? Because of those pills. But during that time, Peter was awakened. What he told me was that, Ali, because he was in Florida, it's long distance, right? He said, Ali, you need someone knee to knee now. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to drink. He's like, you don't know that. Alcoholism is cunning, baffling. You don't know that. You need someone knee to knee. I'm not going to leave you. I'm still on your team. You got to get someone. And I said, well, Peter, I don't know anyone that I want what they have. That's what I said, right? Maybe it was arrogant, but I don't want that one in my area, right? He said, what about Butch? And I said, oh, except for Butch. By the way, for about a year, for a few years, because I witnessed this ego come to me, right? And make me think I'm the power, I'm better than people, right? So I've been praying, God, can you please show me the way of patience, tolerance, and kindness? Please fill me with humility. Can you please show me? I want to be a better person with the desire, right? And Butch came in my life. He's been my sponsor for the last 6.5 years, and he's a loving man. What Butch gave me, he introduced me to a love story of Alcoholics Anonymous. Butch Maslin, he introduced me to the love story of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've never seen a man that walks this path the way he does, with kindness and love, with humility and love. He carries a big book and walks softly. You know? He taught me about practicing principles in my affairs. Love story. The love story that I get to participate in, that I get to be in love with my wife and my son, and be in love with the present moment, be loving to others. It's a lot more than not drinking. You know, it's a lot more than not drinking. And by the way, answering the call of the Spirit, since we're talking about not being rigid, right? I have to have a desire. This is my experience, right? I need to have a desire and take some action and pass this message on, right? But answering the call of the Spirit doesn't always have to come in the form of sponsorship. If you want to get to know me, get to know my kids, right? Get to know my kids in every area of life. This is designed for living. I guess the best way to sort of give you a couple of quick examples is through my career path. Okay, I'll give you a couple of quick examples and I'll end this. Remember, I was having trouble finding a job to support a family. One time I was sponsoring a man who was at a fencing business, and clam shovels. With clam shovels, we were like digging holes in the grass, 3 or 4 feet for the post of the fence. And it was a hard job, man. It's like hustling, labor, hot sun. It was the end of a hard week, and I was, man, tears were coming down. I was cursing God under my lips. God, come on, man. I'm trying to do your work. Give me a break here. This is not what I signed up for. I want to stop fighting with AFSI over the bills. Can you please help me out here? And then I remembered how selfish I'm being. So I went inside in silence and I prayed, God, whoever you are, not whoever you are, whatever. God, please move this selfishness and self-centeredness from me. Show me, who would you have me be? What would you have me do, God? Right after that prayer, I hear a 65-year-old man that was sitting next to me. He was a laborer just like me. He had lost his deck business to a messy divorce. I hear his mouth open up and he says, Ali, can you help me? I've been wanting to drink I've been wanting to kill myself for the past 2 weeks and I can't stop drinking. Can you help me? My mouth opened up. And I started to tell him about how bad it was and the suicide attempts, that I couldn't stay sober. He didn't know it was an AA. He just knew that I didn't drink from the conversations we had. Then I started to tell him about you guys. I started to tell him about the kindness and love you show me, about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That man is sober today, and he's in love with you guys. He's participating in this love story, you know? And I got to tell you right then and there, all the have-tos in my life I was burdened by, they were just transformed to get-tos in my life. I get to come to work. I get to hustle as a laborer. I get to make $15, $20 an hour. I get to look for another job, and I get to help one of God's kids. I floated the rest of the summer in that job. I was floating. I have so many examples like that. If you want to get to know me, get to know my kids. Like Judith, I've been called too. About 8 years ago, in a meditation, it came to me. You got to bring the Fellowship of the Spirit conference to Toronto. This thing that's on fire, man. People need to hear about it. One prayer. All of a sudden, things are set in motion. I start to share it with people. A team gather around me. We've been doing it for 8 years now. It's a pocket of enthusiasm in Toronto there. on fire, man, powerful speakers. You know, Zoom, when the Zoom thing hit, pandemic hit. You want to get to know me, serve my kids. When the pandemic hit, we didn't know what we were doing. Immediate thing was concern. What's going to happen to me? Right? But you trained me well. Next prayer was, God, can you please help me be useful here? What can I do here? The idea came. Start a Step 11 meeting. Start to talk about me. 3 years ago, we started a Step 11 meeting with my friend Teresa. Every week, maybe some of you have been on it. Every week, we get around 150 to 400 people. Now the meetings have opened up around 150 to 250, right? Talking about God, sharing Step 11 experiences. In the last 3 years, we've done 5 to 10 conferences. 3 of them had 1,000 people each session. No one could get in anymore. 10 workshop after workshop after workshop. In the last 3 years, my plate's been so full, but I've never been so fulfilled. It was as if like God put my spiritual life in a pressure cooker. I grew up in these 3 years, spiritually speaking, more than I think I would have in the next 10 years without Zoom, without being with you guys, connecting with people all over the world, listening to stories, how transformation happens, falling in love with you guys. My entire life, I wanted to experience love. I wanted to be in love. I wanted to experience love. I wanted to be loved. You know, maybe that's how I categorized it at the time, right? But I burned my life to the ground chasing that through external things and through the drink. Then I met you guys. And you, people like my sponsor and you introduced me to this love story. This beautiful love story. And what you told me is that the only way for someone like me to participate in this love story is to be loving to other people. The 12th step. It's all encompassing. Pass this message on and practice principles in my affairs. Walk godly everywhere. Right? That's what you taught me. My entire life, I wanted to love myself. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it just hasn't worked for me. When I try to love myself by doing for myself only, it just doesn't work. I'm left empty. But when I start to love you and do for you, all of a sudden I'm filled with love, man. My heart overflows with love. You know what I mean? It's like this ride of life, this roller coaster of life. Sometimes it's bumpy, man. Sometimes it's scary, right? It's like God put me in a seat and introduced me to a pro guy. Put a seatbelt on me. And this seatbelt is made of the 12 steps, right? And the metal parts that connect to the seatbelt is the 12th step and the first step. That's what keeps us together here. Somebody's 12th step and my first step. My 12th step and your first step. That's what keeps us here. Those are the 2 steps that differentiate us from every other religion, every other spiritual path that I know of anyways. Maybe you could, right? Every religion have everything that we have in AA. Of course they do. It's not new to us. We don't have a monopoly. But no other spiritual path has the first half of the first step, powerless over alcohol, and has the first half of the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to pass this message on. God bless you. Thank you very much.